Hi, welcome to the award-winning Ed Brown Show. And I mean, we have Michael Braxton here, the retired Secret Service agent.
Foreign Service.
Foreign Service. Well, Secret Service, Foreign Service, they're both the same, aren't they?
No,
Mike?
no, absolutely not.
One carry a gun, one doesn't, right? Is that right?
No, not really.
Not really. Well, anyway, we got a top subject here. Well, we're talking about this sample ballot. Did you get your sample ballot in the mail? Oh, wow. I didn't know that they had about 30 people running. Hey, anybody that has problems reading or seeing, they wouldn't understand what the ballot is trying to tell them. Because really, what do you think of this ballot?
It's a little
Michael?
confusing to me. I've seen simpler ballots in foreign countries, actually.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In other countries, here we have Tuesday, November 8th is the day that you vote. Okay, the presidential election, and they did have it in, they do have it in Spanish and in English. So I give them credit for that. The polls open from 7 to 8 a.m. And they have that in Spanish and English. So I have to give the Spanish real good, thing here, because they have worked it. Because I remember when they didn't have it in Spanish.
Only one language, English.
Only one language, English. They do have this in Spanish. So the Spanish population must have been kicking some what in order to get. But the ballot itself, I want you to sit down and let me know how many of these individuals that you've heard of that's running for vice president and president. Now, tell me this. This shows you all kinds of ways that you mark the ballot, you do the ballot. But if in fact that you have, what would you say this ballot educational level is? Yes,
I would say it has to be
below high school, right?
Beyond high school. Yeah,
Beyond.
I would say a college student would find that even a little bit challenging. My question about that ballot is, are those also sample names? Because there are no familiar names to me.
Right. Well, most of the names there I couldn't identify either. But you can always register. Anybody can register to
Sure.
vote. But why isn't the media giving the people here on this ballot some of the time they giving the Republicans and Democrats? That's what I don't understand.
Well,
See, the media should have introduced. They have plenty people running, and they have time instead of repetition, running two people all the time. Why not give the people a shot at some of these people that decide they're going to run? They may have some good ideas.
If those are the names of genuine candidates, then that's a valid question, because they haven't been
had any exposure.
Exposed on TV or in the media.
No, none at all. The Republican Democrats, they dominate. These are the individuals. They may have some good ideas. For the country.
Sample ballots, sample names, perhaps.
Yes, and I was amazed at the number of individuals that are running for president and vice president. I said, this couldn't be true, you know what I mean? But like I say, the Spanish, I have to give them credit. They went out and they got this ballot in Spanish, so the times and all of that, so that they'll be able to go out and vote. Having something like this I feel this is ammunition for the enemy. To have a ballot, this is a sample ballot, but I mean, what is it, 3 weeks before the election? Yeah, that's what I don't understand.
It's not only that, this is a diverse community, and it has to be said that it's not only Spanish that is a widely spoken language here. There are people from Vietnam, there are people from Cambodia and other countries who would do well to have ballots in their languages, but The question is how much money is going to be
Spent.
on diverse issues.
Right. Well, that definitely. I was surprised. I'm sure that most of you will will get this sample ballot and everything. I think how many pages we have here? Oh, the sample ballot. It looks like it's about 21 pages that you have to that you have to digest. And they give one thing I give them credit for. They have an illustration on how to mark the ballot.
Well, that's good.
So
that's good.
That's a positive thing. But I was just amazed at the number of people that are running. I'll bet you all of you out there do not. I bet you can't name 5 people that's running for president or vice president, and they represent all walks of life. They represent the Green Party, all those different programs that we people support. And these are citizens too, but they're supporting different programs. So what does the media do? They don't give them any coverage.
Well, they did a couple of tests on television as to see how many people on a given street corner recognized Pence and Kane. And very few. It's something like somewhere around 20
Pence
to 30%.
and Kane. I mean, what is that? What are they? Businessmen or senators or what?
Well, Pence is governor of Indiana, and Kane is a senator from Virginia.
Right.
And they're both, respectively, they're the Republican and Democratic candidates for vice president.
Yeah, right. Well, don't forget. It'll take you a while. Don't forget. You got a sample ballot. No excuse. So you may spend some hours deciphering it and trying to find out who's who. But I tell you one thing: the media did a terrific job on the Republicans and the Democrats. The other people, they don't matter, So basically, that's what this is saying by giving the people. Giving the people 3 weeks to digest this 21-page sample ballot. Okay, the next question, we're going to talk about is what about this rumor? Every time you look around, there's rumor about Putin, the Prime Minister of President of Russia. Tell us a little bit about his. He's really pushing a certain candidate. He thinks that candidate has all the answers.
Well, this is interesting. When I was in school, I did Russian studies, and so this question it really interests me a lot. I think it's safe to say that most scholars agree that Russia is an authoritarian society, and Putin is an authoritarian leader.
That's clear.
Donald Trump has been described as authoritarian as well. So it's not strange that authoritarians will praise each other.
Okay, what is authoritarian?
That means that the rule of law is probably secondary to what the authoritarian leader thinks the law should be.
Mm.
And
sound like dictator to me.
Well, yeah, I want to stay away from that word because that's really a loaded term. So if we just stick to authoritarian, I think we're safe. The other thing is that Hillary Clinton's bio is really impressive. And if you are America's adversary, as I think we can safely say Putin often is, what you do not want is a competent, professional politician as president of the United States. You prefer someone who is learning the ropes. So if Putin had a vote, he would vote for the one with the weakest bio, not the one with the strongest bio. So I think that's what we're looking at. And these rumors that Russian hackers have been dabbling in the in the databases of the Democratic Party.
And email. Everybody
and emails
understands
as well.
Right.
That doesn't strike me as strange either. just a few minutes on the internet, Googling the war between Georgia and Russia, for example, you'll see that what the Russians actually did when they attacked this tiny state of Georgia to its south was to disable their computers by doing a full frontal assault on the Georgian communication systems. So in effect, the various Georgian army units were wandering around like blind men because they couldn't communicate with each other. So they couldn't coordinate their defense against the Russian attack because the Russians were hacking.
Well, weren't we in the Black Sea over there with our ships and everything during the Georgian War? But the Russians had a blockade to keep our ships from into the Black Sea.
I heard something like that. Yes, yes. No, I think this is fair. This is fairly serious, and the Russians take it very seriously, and they expect to, and if they are in fact doing this, they expect to prevail. They expect to come to have a result that favors their political plan for relations with the United States.
Now, what is the driving force that makes a country that they have everything that we have, guns, tanks, and money, to want to be partners with the United States?
Well,
they didn't do. What is this organization that they refused to join? The European.
The European Economic Community, and that
Right.
was in the late 40s, early 50s, when there was initially it was a European coal community.
Right.
What the political science professors often say is that the authoritarian state must expand and grow territorially in order to survive, and but stable democratic states need only grow in the sense of building their economies and this is quite simplistic, but this is the essential difference between what you see among the Western European states and the United States and Canada and countries like the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union needed to expand into Eastern Europe. It needed to expand and reclaim the Crimea, and it needed to expand into, or I should say the Soviet Union, I should say Russia, needed to expand into Eastern Ukraine. You don't see that among democracies normally.
Well, what does this have to do with one of the candidates that's running that Russians favor?
Well,
what category is he in?
Well, if the blocking power, theoretically, if the blocking power is NATO and NATO's strongest partner is the United States, you want to have a leader of the United States who doesn't have that much faith in NATO, says that NATO partners need to pay up if they expect to be protected.
But we finance NATO. Everybody in the world know that.
Everybody in the world knows that, but if you have a president who changes the rules of the game, that's something that the Russians, with their authoritarian past, would be quite interested in.
And you think one of our candidates might do that?
I think one of our candidates has already said he's going to do that. He's thinking about doing that.
Okay, so this is the carrot that Russia is handing the American people, is that, hey, you got a good man there, don't let him go because he's good for us.
Well, it's not quite that blatant. And to be fair, some Russians are saying it might be better to have someone who is practiced, professional, and predictable like Hillary Clinton, because you know what to expect from her with
She's involved with the system.
Yeah, she evolved with the system, And the system evolved with her.
With her, right.
But with Donald Trump, you never know.
So what happens is that, what about the rest of the world? You know, what are they doing? They got to take sides too. You know, as far as they got to protect their actually protect their association with either one of the countries, because if they're on the wrong side, then they are in trouble.
Well, that's an interesting question. I've spent some time in Mexico recently. And Donald Trump visited Mexico while I was there. Now, the president of Mexico, Ernesto Peña Nieto, is not very popular. His
Among his own people.
among his own people, his rating was somewhere around 25%. After Trump left, no one really discussed his popularity rating, but there were signs on Independence Day, their July 4th, saying Peña Nieto must go. So the fact that he hosted Trump did not help his ratings. That's
well. What about trade and these different embargoes that we have? Wouldn't that affect the presidency of the United States and Russia, really?
well, the embargoes on Russia. When you have the world's number one and number two military powers clashing in this way, there are few options left to the number one power. You can't go toe to toe militarily,
Right.
And if there's no economic balance between the two, in other words, the number one power is the United States, and it's militarily, economically much more powerful than the Soviet Union, then that's the leverage the United States has to use, and it will use it.
Well, one thing you hit I've talked about it, and you hit on something that I feel we as African American actually feel it firsthand, but I think it's all over the world, and they call that economic slavery. Now, tell us about the effects of the economy. I mean, every country has economic slavery of some type. The United States has economic slavery. In other words, they control here in the United States, 3% of the people control most of the money.
Well, yeah, this is one of America's most debilitating problems, and I think it is demoralizing an increasing number of our people. There are two books that I think are interesting from the perspective of African Americans. One is Worse Than Slavery, and I think that's by David Blackman. And another is Slavery by Another Name, and that's by David Oshinsky. So if people really want to understand the chapter and verse of the depths of economic slavery and I would say economic exploitation.
That's a nice word instead of slavery.
Yeah,
exploitation.
Those are two books that I would recommend. I would recommend reading. The point is that it's unseemly for a nation to grow powerfully and to grow economically into a power, and to disclaim the benefits of slavery. That's unseemly, and it does a disservice to scholarship. We know that America was able to rise because labor was so cheap.
Yeah, labor was free, basically.
Well, yeah.
And, okay, well, you look at the American Indian, they're the only true Americans. And this country was built on immigrants. Because percentage of, if you take the immigrants out of America, what would you have?
Well, I would just recast that a bit. Slavery involved Indians. It also involved the Indian people of Mexico.
I know, but that the Indians would not work. That's why they went to Africa and got some people that they feel could make money for the country.
Well, what they actually did with many of the Indians was to move them. If the Indians
On
were
reservation.
if the Indians were located in North Carolina, they would move them to northern Florida, where they were strangers and they were beholden totally to the slaveholder. And if they were living in Florida, they would move them up to Tennessee. So they would simply intentionally displace these people so that the Indians would work in the same caste as the Africans that they had brought from Africa.
So actually, that's really backfiring on them now, because the Indians, they got the land and the reservations, and they're using it for economic gains.
Well, that's right. That's right. The casinos, the Indian casinos.
Right.
That's right. It'll be interesting to see how this resolves itself. But going, if you don't mind, going back to the Russian situation, this is a serious issue, and the United States and Russia have been, I would say, have had difficulties ever since the creation of the Soviet Union, the Bolshevik Revolution, when several European powers, including the United States, intervened in that revolution. And there were people who, I would imagine all of them have passed on now, but there were people 10, 20 years ago who fought in Russia against the Bolsheviks.
Okay, one thing I thought that's very important is language. Now, you speak 5, 6 different languages. Do you find that that was one of the deterrents that other countries had in Europe, in China, other places, because they had different tribes, different religions? Everybody thinks that all Russians are a certain religion, all blacks are a certain religion, and right down the line. But you look at it, and they had internal strife with the language.
In a sense, yes. And in Russia, I remember a figure that there was something like 216 major and minor nationalities in the old Soviet Union.
Right.
And the Russians came out with an edict roughly before the 70s that the language of the proletariat was Russian. Now, to translate that into language that we can understand, that meant that if you wanted to go to college and you wanted to be considered a professional, you had to speak Russian at the professional level. Now, that meant that if you were Georgian, Kazakh, Tatar, Uzbek, Ukrainian, you had to speak Russian. Russian is not a simple language to learn.
But there's so many dialects. But you find most countries have different dialects. People in the north can't understand the one in the south or west or east. Isn't that true?
That's true, but this is not the problem that we had that we encountered in Russia. In Russia, you had people who were as different from the Russians as Mexicans are from Englishmen. And these people were told that they had to learn Russian if they wanted to enter college and lead a professional life in the Soviet Union.
And under whose term was that?
Brezhnev.
Okay, what we have to do, boy, I tell you, time really goes fast, and I want to tell you, economic slavery is here, and what you have to do You have to get together, stop by, call these people and ask them, MGM especially, about, hey, we want some CEOs down there in MGM, and see what kind of answer you get. This has been Ed Brown. And don't forget your ballot. Your ballot. It'll take you a while to decipher it.